Yo, here we are. Awesome. On our Wednesday afternoon conversation to talk about just things that what people has been getting from class the past couple of classes. I'm really curious. Strangely enough, what's important is that the feedback that these days that I receive is mostly from people on the stream and not from students. I mean, because I don't have time to talk to students. Kind of the class is over and the next class comes storming in and people leave, and then I don't get really a chance to talk to them and kind of hear what's going on. So these opportunities here to talk to you all and hear some thoughts are very useful for me, because I don't know what people are getting. And Dawn and Diane, I see those comments that Jeff put up. Thanks, man. It's so cool. It's so cool. It's particularly cool because, I've been teaching 20-year-olds for 39 and a half years, and many of whom now are no longer, are, my God, like nearing retirement, I suppose. Holy smokes. So it's good to just test the waters out with different generations and people in different places and different nations, different societies and cultures. So I really appreciate the opportunity. So listen, so Jeff, maybe you can throw a couple questions out there, things that that came up that you think are questions that people have, or some thoughts. I know you said something about the hey Eric, yeah, about this cultures based on homogeneity. It really is like, we live in this kind of world, like the water or the air we breathe and the water we drink is this kind of tells us that multiculturalism is the best way and it's the ideal way. And I think because anything other than that sounds like ethnocentrism and racism. So we are just, socialized increasingly to believe that life should be multicultural and that we should be interested in other cultures. We should want to travel. If you don't want to travel, if you don't want to leave the United States, then that indicates some kind of narrow-mindedness on your part. And that's a problem. Why don't you want to leave? And, it's like small town living is disparaged, or anything that implies that people aren't like reaching out beyond who they are. It's all disparaged. And I don't think anybody has really tried to do that per se. It's not like it's the left or something, or liberals or whatever it is. I don't know. Certain groups of people have all gotten together and said, hey, let's put this message out there. But what has happened is that, as more and more people in the United States, like if we go back, 150 years, the majority of Americans were born outside the United States. And then that started to change a little bit. But now we're seeing the number rise again. It's clearly not a majority. It's about 50 million or so. So I think it's about 50 million. It's about 20% of the population. But as the numbers, the engagement with people from other cultures has expanded, we've had this concurrent thing that happens here in the United States, which is really valuable, which is, hey, enjoy or open up to people who are not like you. And, don't be narrow, and learn from them and think from them, and be open-minded, right? And those are all really good things, but it kind of goes into the world of heterogeneity of a culture is the best possible thing. And that's not. And so yesterday I was sort of trying to get at that there's homogenous culture is awesome. Like, man, when I'm in Korea, and I just see Koreans being Koreans. There's like it's just as one particular culture, but I saw the same thing in Japan, and I see it in other places. Uh, see it in Haiti, for example. I saw it in Ethiopia, and I felt it, and in the Gulf states of the Middle East, I see. Although that's a little bit different because we're going to see tomorrow in class. I'm going to talk about the heterogeneity and actually talk about the Gulf states. But the point being, like, there's just like kind of a way of a shared understanding that people have, and it's really cool. It's really, really cool. So anyway, that's what I was really trying to get at yesterday, and I think it was really fun to hear that from the students. Okay, so anyway, let me go back up on something. So, yeah. Okay, so ethnocentrism, what I say. All right, Alex, did you know something about worker emigration in Europe in the 60th and 70th? The Asian students sound like people in my youth at this time, like from Tuesday, the biggest Italian city in the Alps. Yeah, I think I don't know that. I don't know the European story there, but in that sense, but I know that there are still throughout Europe. I mean, there are obviously communities that have not been touched by immigration in migration, right? In the same way that others have been, like, in the big cities. Like, when I was in Paris back in October, Paris it's just like any other city. I mean, I wouldn't have had any idea that actually that I was in Paris. I mean, I could have been anywhere. Extremely multicultural. I could have been in New York very easily. And so, but there are so many communities that have been touched by immigration in that way. So it would be cool. It would be nice to, if somebody wants to hop on at some point, I'd be open to that. If you want to kind of jump on and have a quick share a couple things, it would be really interesting to hear your take. Yeah, Ellie's I'm going to say Ellie's adventure. Yeah, I know. So I'm 63 and I listen to these students, and I think that I'm always amazed at how thoughtful that they can be, and what interesting insights they bring to the room, right? In yesterday's class, the woman from China, I had been looking for a student from China to join I wanted someone from Japan, but this semester it doesn't appear as though we have anybody from Japan in class, and I often have at least one person. But she, she just got here, man. Like, it was so interesting, and she was very nervous about talking, but it was so interesting. And those other two students are exchange students. They came here just to be at Penn State for a semester. So, and they ended up in my class. So that's really cool. All right, hey Jeff. Wait, let's look at a few comments from class 5. Let's look at a couple of things. I'd be really curious.
It'll be class 6.
Should Ireland remain Irish? Yeah, I'm amazed that Ireland is. yeah, please remain Irish as best you possibly can. Yeah. Okay. Hang on, I really appreciate a list of these books. Okay, so the books about Christianity, right? So here, one of the here's a really, I'm going to put something in the chat by an author. This is a scholar who talks all about early Christianity, and the first book of his that I read. Was this one, Misquoting Jesus. But he wrote this other book, Lost Christianity. So this is the class, I think it was class 5, in which I was asking no, it was class 6. I was asking the young woman who's Christian about her, if she would be willing to read some things that might really get her to seriously question her Christianity. And now, mind you, when I do something like that in class, sometimes people think like, okay, I'm trying to convince a student to, give up their Christianity or something like that, or give up their beliefs. But actually, what I know is that it's much more likely that if she read these books, that her faith would get stronger. So that's generally speaking what happens. I don't know that I've ever experienced anybody to go in the opposite direction, right? But in any case, what I found about this Bart Ehrman, what's so interesting about him is that he started his college career off at a Bible college, and thinking that he would go into the world of the ministry, and but after a year of really seriously studying things, he saw that it just wasn't going to be enough for him, so he switched to a secular university. I think it might have been like University of Michigan or something like that, or maybe that's where he did his PhD. I don't know, but um, what happened? He just dug in and never turned against Christianity, but just became a scholar and an agnostic to many of the kinds of questions that other people ask. So I will say that my experience with theologians, so I've had the opportunity to engage a number of theologians, people who are not just priests, but actually scholarly priests. So they're professors and this sort of thing, and they write books and they write articles and all. And usually they begin as priests, but they just they decide that scholarship, as opposed to being a priest in a parish in some way, and kind of delivering the sacraments and ministering or talking to people, is not really what they want to do. And so what I found is that so many of them became agnostics, right? So they're still Catholics. They still connect to the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church, but they're basically agnostics. So I would ask someone, well, do you believe in a God? They're like, that's not even a question I entertain anymore. It's just beyond that. They're so deeply involved in trying to understand more of a different kind of world, right? Well, anyway, Bart Ehrman struck me as he's kind of one of those people. And he's very thoughtful about early Christianity, and he really wants to get to the truth. He doesn't have an axe to grind, and he's not interested in moving people closer to or away from Christianity. But what he's after is trying to look at what we actually know, and for certain, and what we know through speculation, and what we know through certain amount of probability. That it's likely to be true given X, Y, and Z things, but we can't be certain of it. And there are many things that we can know about how we got to where we are, but there's not a lot that we can know about the life of Jesus. And these folks all are pretty clear that there was someone who lived who fits the description of Jesus of Nazareth, and there was a kerfluffle, so to speak, about whether that he made an impact, this person, and the Romans had a response to him. So that is that seems to be pretty a standard piece. But once we get beyond that, it's very difficult to know. And so, we're basing all of our belief systems on these texts that, really didn't get written for a century and a half later. And I think the very first full version of what is mostly the Bible right now, because with the earliest one is, I think, in like the early fourth century or something. So that, like, where did this stuff come from? Now, if you believe, if you're a believer on the basis of faith, which seems to me that's what Christianity is about. In the end, you have faith, and you build it on faith, right? And Jesus, there's a quote about, I can't even ever say that Jesus said, because it doesn't. I've studied enough of this stuff but there's a quote attributed to Jesus as, if you have faith the size of even a grain of sand, or something, you can move a mountain or something like that, right? And so that's pretty. It's faith, right? So you have to have faith. You just believe that it must be that somehow it's inspired, and the words somehow landed, but if you're a sociologist, you think like, look, man, we have hang on one second. So, we have this little fragment that's like about this big, and on that fragment are some words. And those words we later find in one of the books, the book of John. But otherwise, we have nothing. Then at some point we find these books, like fragments, but we don't know when they were written. And then we find other ones and we realize they're copies of the earlier ones. And many of them are forgeries. So much of the conversation that these folks do is about what are fraudulent writings, right? And what are forgeries, right? And what are just like right and wrong? What are copies? And you got to, as a sociologist studying like human beings, as a sociologist studying human beings, I don't think faith. I don't lead with faith at all. I lead with, okay, what is probably true? And that's, that's a very difficult for people to do, to go with that. But, anyway, that's where all that came from. So if you could pick up one of those books, if you're interested, and just read it. It's pretty cool. Hey, Eric Gajewski, although that's one of those probably, I'm sure, Polish names. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. Awesome, man. Thanks for becoming a member. That's so cool. Oh my God, it's so awesome. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's really. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so that's what I was referring to with that young woman, right? And there are a few things in my life where I've sort of gone down rabbit holes, and one was studying the CIA and all the secret things that the CIA has done, and I started reading books written by retired CIA agents who were allowed to, everything they write has to get like approved by the agency, right? And so, but so I get like so the book then becomes like, what's left over, right? So there was one guy, the first guy to do this was a guy named Philip Agee back in the 1970s or early 1980s, I think it was 70s. And that was, and then, so I went down a rabbit hole for about maybe a year and a half, where I was just reading all this stuff, and and just constantly, it's like, oh my God, the things that happen, and the things that people do, or things that we did, or the CIA did. I can't say the government did, because it's just individual people. But another rabbit hole was this kind of early Christianity stuff. Hey, okay, in the podcast. Yeah, hang on. Let me find that. I'll find yeah. Hang on. I'll find this podcast. Hold on. Yeah, hold tight. The guy who has the podcast I think it's called The Glenn Show. His name is Glenn Lowry. Yeah, Man of Isle. This is live on YouTube right now. Glenn Lowry's his name, and the other guy's name is John McWhorter. And so they don't do the podcast together. That's Glenn's podcast, or Professor Lowry's podcast, but he often has Professor McWhorter come on, and they just do some things. Man Isle, thanks for tuning in from Saudi Arabia. Awesome. Yeah, that's cool. Okay. Um, hey, okay, here's a question that came up in the on the in the comments about nepotism. When I was talking about these questions of like what would be affirmative action, people receiving some kind of benefit on the basis of some sociological or demographic characteristic that it's a benefit that they wouldn't have if it was not for that characteristic, right? And we often talk about how that's not fair, so you get, because you're um, disabled, or I don't know, you're a, a minoritized in some way, right? Or you're poor, or you live in a rural area, or you're a woman, or you're LGBT, or you're black, or you're an immigrant, or you're Latino or Asian or something, right? So we're going to give you something to kind of give you a boost in some way, and yeah, and and we talk about how that's not fair, but nepotism is simply another form of affirmative action, right? You get something that you didn't really work for, you didn't really deserve, but you get it just on the basis of some kind of um, demographic characteristic of yours. In this particular case, it would be maybe from a friend or a parent, because somebody you met, So maybe a sociological characteristic is a better one. And, you know, the whole kind of college scene for young adults is based on nepotism, right? And we teach people that nepotism is good, and we teach people to seek it out. We say, like, go to your classes and meet your professors and meet other people, and that's how you find out about opportunities. And it's about who you know. It's not about what you know, and you got to know the right people. And so make sure when you're in college, we send our kids off to college, and we say, go when there's a speaker somewhere, go talk to them afterwards and ask them if they have any opportunities, and this, that, and the other thing, right? Or we have parents have no problem finding internships for their own kids, or passing along their child's name to their friend who might have an internship available. I mean, that's just seen as a given. But well, what did that child earn? You know what I mean? That child just happened to be born to this person who knew somebody, and that's not fair either. And if you're a person who happens to not have a lot of connections for whatever reason, like me, when I was young, I had no connections whatsoever, and uh, that then that's not really fair. So basically, we're kind of saying, like, well, we can't, if as long as people are, it's just okay. Help your own children, and that's help people, and that's just an acceptable thing, right? But if the people who are most likely to be helped are people of particular, hang on, let me go back. How is that fair, though? How is the person who gets an internship based on nepotism qualified? And how is it just assumed that they're qualified? And people don't question that in the same way they do affirmative action, right? Like, we pick out, like, oh, that person got a job because she's a woman. She got that internship because she's a woman. Or here's an internship that we brought the Mexican American student in, and we gave that person the internship. And yeah, there was like a white student that a lot of people were saying was more qualified, but anyway, we gave it to this other person. And then people start saying it's really easy to open up that door. Well, that Mexican isn't qualified, or is less qualified. But we aren't so quick to say that when things are based on or built on nepotism. And we do say it sometimes. Oh, that's the boss's son. He's an F up, like this guy. Like, oh God, that's his nephew. We hired the supervisor's nephew. The guy's a complete idiot. He's a tool. But whatever. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but if affirmative action leads to unqualified candidates or less well qualified candidates, or is unfair, then nepotism leads to an equal number of less qualified candidates, and is equally unfair. And so I think that's what I was trying to get at a little bit in that, but we didn't fully pull it out. All right, man. So Jeff, all right, I'm going to respond to some of these. Oh, hey, talk to dead oh, Cherish Clark, yeah. 5 days ago, I say talk to dead people. Yeah, I did, man. I did, I have. So, here's the thing. I mean, not talk through somebody else, right? So, years ago, uh, I started here's another rabbit hole that again on, children who are aware of their past lives. I read some stories about it, and then so Jeff, I'm responding to the comment from Cherish Clark there that you put up on the in the chat. Uh, so, and then I found this person who does a lot of research on children who remember their past lives, and I just like started reading and sucking in as many stories as I could get. It's absolutely fascinating. I mean, there's a guy down in North Carolina, I think it is, or Virginia, I think it's Virginia, who's just done a ton of research all over the world. You just watch videos, and the idea is this: that children very often, when they're born, many children will start talking about other lives, right? Now, in a culture like ours that doesn't believe in reincarnation in the West, where you're not all in the United States, okay? So in the West, where we reincarnation is not a central tenet of a belief system here, cultural or religious or otherwise, and so we often probably kids talk about their past lives or stories, have stories, and they don't you don't even pay attention. But they're these these what I'm talking about is when children, when they first start to talk, are able to articulate things about who they are and talk about themselves. Hey, you're calling me Sam. Sam isn't my name. My name is actually Michael, let's say, or Miguel. And in the and like I don't and really where's um Susanna. Like, well, who's Susanna? Well, Susanna's my mom, right? Where's she at? It's like, I'm your mom, kind of thing, right? And so kids start doing this, and then um, again, in a culture like this, they're often disregarded. But when they're not, and when people take it really seriously, um, what we find it well hang on before I say that. What we find is that what they find, the researchers who are, kind of isolate the kids and really look at them and analyze what's going on, is that they will children will forget their past, what would appear to be their past lives, by the age of 4 or 5 or something. Like the stories will just fade away and they'll slowly blend into their new life. But what the researchers done and what people have done is, like, as soon as children start talking about this, and if they can catch it quickly, they the message to the parents is, hey, no television, no outside influences, like nothing. We really need to get access to the kids. And then they do interviews with the kids and they get as much information as they can from these children about who they're saying that they were. And then, if they're lucky and they get an S, then they go investigate. And man, the stories of finding children, the past lives of kids, like the one story that I read fairly recently is this kid who was, grew up in a town that they identified that the town was about, 50 miles, 50 kilometers away or something. This was not in the United States. I mean, this happens all the time, by the way, but this is one particular story. And so the kid was able to take them to the house. He had a street name, and then they found the house. He was able to identify where it was. And so they went into the house and they sat down, and the kid was like, yeah. The child was young. The child was like, 5 years old at this time, right? So some children remember the stories longer, but whatever. And then the child said, like, yeah, but I don't remember this room. These two rooms they were connected at one point, and then they found out that, oh yeah, they put a wall in between the two rooms. And the kid said, the thing that really jumped out to me is, he said, well, in my closet was in the back corner there, and in the closet I wrote something on the wall, right? And they go back in the closet, and damn, if there wasn't something that the kid wrote on the wall. So stuff like this, right? That this happens. I mean, this is common, right? It's not. Or one of the things that they tend to see is that it happens with boys more than girls. that oftentimes people have some kind of a birthmark or something, and that they are able to identify back that the birthmark actually oftentimes represents how they died. So someone will have a birthmark in the side of their neck, and then they find out who that child was, and then they found out, oh, it's this person who died when they were like 28 years old and they got stabbed in the neck. And now that the child has a birthmark on their neck, or their leg or their arm, stuff like that, like crazy stuff. So anyway, you can imagine getting lost in this, right? Like it's just like down the rabbit hole of reading these stories. And so anyway, I got really interested knowing that, oh, there's this sort of fluid connection between these different lives, right? So there was a woman here locally. I have been to people who communicate with the other world, right? People who say that they're seers or whatever. You pay them a little money or you do whatever, and they try to kind of make that connection to this, to cross through the ether of this world and the next world, right? There's a lot of fraudulent people out there, as you might imagine, right? A lot of folks that are just, whatever. Like let me read your palm and I'll, give me $50, I'll read your palm, I'll tell you your future, kind of stuff. But what I've discovered is that there are actually some people that really connect, right? So there was somebody locally here who was we finally went to. We've been hearing from lots of people about her, and we finally went to her. And the first session was that we did. My wife and I did with her. Yeah, because you sort of have to wait and see if anybody shows up, right? It was okay. I mean, it didn't jump out, right? And then I was like, okay, whatever. But when my mother-in-law died, my wife with her father, my father-in-law, went to see her quite a number of times, right? Whoa, man. Whoa, my mother-in-law showed up. She was there. This woman who didn't know anything about my father-in-law or my mother-in-law, didn't really know anything about Lori, was saying what my mother-in-law wanted to say. Like, so she had no idea. It's not like she went and secretly did research on this. I mean, but wow, like my mother-in-law was saying stuff that like they would only know. All right. So anyway, I'll just tell you one story. After my father-in-law then died 2 years later, he just died this past July. My wife went to see this woman and do a session with her. Right. And she's very, very humble. Like, you wouldn't really know about her if you didn't. The one who sees and connects to the other side. So my father-in-law says, so he shows up, right? Now, mind you, this woman she knows my father-in-law, okay? So she's met him. Now, it's not like she just hears literal voices, like she's in this kind of space. It's not as though somebody's speaking to her. She's interpreting. I can imagine it's just immensely complex. She can't even explain what it is that happens. But at some point in time, like there are all sorts of things that my father-in-law said to my wife, right? Again, this is his spirit, right? And the first thing he said to her was, "Hey, I've been practicing my guitar." Right. And now this woman had no idea my father-in-law played a guitar, right? And my wife was like, whoa, ask him like, what, say more about that. And he's like, well, yeah, I was just spending a lot of time playing my guitar. Well, what happened? This is one of many stories I could tell. My father-in-law always wanted to play guitar. He loved Johnny Cash and Willie Nelson, right? And Merle Haggard. And he always wanted to play guitar. So after Judy, my mother-in-law, died, we got him a guitar and he started playing, taking lessons. He was 80 years old when he started taking lessons. And he had these big fingers, man, like the size of this microphone fingers, man. It was like unbelievable. And he just played guitar, and he just really fell in love with the guitar. But he was 80 and then 81, it wasn't easy for him, but he did. And so nobody would have any idea that it's like playing guitar, right? So this is the kind of stuff, speaking and hearing from the other world. It's really, yeah, you can like not believe it. That's fine. Like say like, oh, that doesn't happen. But there are a lot of things that happen that we just don't experience. So we imagine they must not happen. Or we don't want to believe it, or whatever the case is. I don't know. But anyway, it's just became for Lori and I, for my wife and I, just this kind of thing. Like, wow, like we're just in conversation with people who are on the other side. So, yeah, I could just tell. There's so many stories, man, of things that were stated from the other side. But here's the one thing that you need to know, I suppose, if anyone's interested. It's really cool to drop our bodies and to go to the next world. Like, don't be afraid. There's nothing to be afraid of. It's really cool. For a certain amount of time, there's this thing being born and reincarnated, and that's the thing. We only with the kids, we know that we've identified kids. I mean, these people have applied the scientific method to studying children who have had past lives. So, once you apply that method, meaning you rule out all other possible places or pieces of causality, and all you do is focus on it's only that the child only knows X amount of information. He had to get the information somewhere, and the only place that all that information comes together is in a past life, right? That's it. Like, and they find that life, they find that person that child was, and that person has laid out all of the pieces of that child's life in the past. And here it is. We found that person. We found when they died and how they died. And like, wow, that's science, really. So for me, I'm a skeptic. Like, I just like, that it's got to be a really strong story, like what I just told you, the guitar story. But there are some that are even more profound than that. Anyway, yeah, for me, otherwise I don't really believe. But in any case, I think I was saying, yeah, don't be afraid. Dropping our bodies is really, really cool. And not cool, but I mean, it's just like, it's not a problem. It's like just really lovely. It's fine. Nothing to be afraid of. So anyway, that's that. Okay. Okay. That first section was, oh yeah. Hey, yeah. Okay. Okay, God, I gotta go. User CH4MM7DY, yeah, whatever that is. It seems like Sosha's taking some red pills. Even mentioning Glenn Lowry and John McWhorty is risky in these spaces, but he's using some moderate arguments that can challenge. Yeah, really. No, listen, Glenn Lowry's a both these men they're really smart and thoughtful people. And like, look, someone can, what I was just saying about past lives and children and reincarnation and so on, anybody could just like write that off. It's like, oh, this guy's a complete lunatic, right? But if you actually read about it and study about it and pay attention, you can't write it off so easily. These are scientists. These are people who are really, really serious about their science. So they're academics, people who are in physics and biology and engineering and in medicine, who are engaged in this research with children in past lives. So these are smart, thoughtful people. And so, when I think about like Glenn Lowry and John McWhorter, it's like, yeah, people just want to write folks off, and I don't write anybody off. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, the red pills. Yeah. Oh God. First section was an excellent example of question and secret beliefs. Schillick said that. Yeah, I think that's the piece about that I was talking about with the early Christianity, and then asking Will, my friend, former student, former compadre, would he be willing to watch these documentaries? Watch a documentary that says that that will lead you to really question whether Derek Chauvin, the police officer in Minneapolis, got railroaded. I mean, and by, spending basically the rest of his life in prison for murdering George Floyd. Would you be willing to watch that video knowing that it's a really smart, very thoughtful video, and seeing some things that it would be very discomforting, right? Is that the word, right? Discomforting? Or is it disquieting? One or the other. I don't know. Someone put in the chat which one is it. But would you be willing to really take the risk of that, where you might have to shift some things that you believe? That's really huge, right? And I don't disconcerting. Yeah, disconcerting. Okay, we'll use that. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, are we willing to do that? I mean, the problem is, like, it's really difficult to say that we're wrong, right? Like, I don't want to say that I'm wrong about anything, man. I don't like being wrong. That's why I try to be so careful in the room, because I don't want folks like who are watching, folks like you, to jump on and say, hey, you really screwed up. That's not true. And there have been times when I use bad data that I just, like, I don't know, I get lost, but I just, something, I don't know, I just missed something. And then I feel some kind of way about that. It's flawed. The crux of the issue is the judge didn't allow evidence that would be reduced murder to manslaughter. Yeah. The documentary, that particular documentary but that's really is, but the crux of it, though, is that there's also a method of a police procedure where he, had his knee on his neck, that is really kind of a standard police procedure in many cases, right? And, the point being, are we willing to look at that stuff? And that's it. That's all it is, man. Are we willing to look at anything like that? And the Trayvon Martin piece, right? There's a kind of a discovery of Trayvon Martin. One of the major witnesses was not who they used in the trial. Does not appear to be the person who Trayvon Martin was speaking with that night. And I'm like, yo, man, if that's the case, that's really a problem. And I don't want, like, this is not to say that George Zimmerman and Derek Chauvin and so on, it's not to say that they're not guilty of something or whatever. It's not to say any of that. Just for me, if I'm going to be true to the truth, if I'm going to seek the truth, I have to be willing to look at things that appear to me to be something that I disagree with. Like when, Donald Trump's, this is really easy with him, because it's really easy to dismiss him if you want to be thoughtful about things, right? If you like populist rhetoric, then so if you want to look at populist rhetoric, then I think it's easy to just kind of follow somebody or to follow him, right? If you don't like populist rhetoric, it's really easy to disregard Trump. But what's not easy is to not like populist rhetoric and yet listen to the rhetoric and find out what this person is actually saying. And that's a very different thing, man. And so for me, I'm constantly trying to find things, and I don't have enough time in the day to do the full exploration. So, okay. Yeah. So V cubed 1080. The problem with the discussion about the Supreme Court decision on affirmative action was it was the wrong one, right? In your opinion, it's not the job of the courts to right social wrongs. Yeah, I don't know, right? Like I don't know. I don't walk into the I don't walk into the world of law in that way. Like I try to, I don't know. I just try. It's like it's so complicated in so many ways. I think when I get into these kinds of questions, it's enough for me. What I'm trying to do with my students, anyway, is simply just push them to assume that if they've taken a strong position one way or another, then to recognize that there's probably an equally strong position on the other side or on a different side. And just to be aware that there are these other strong positions out there. And so um, just stay true to the idea that maybe it's essential to um, at least to know that these positions are there. I think maybe that's it. So I guess that's just what I'm trying to do with students, right? So I don't know about that. I mean, what you're saying, yeah. Is it the court's job to right social wrongs? I don't know. In a way, that's kind of what we're doing anyway with so many laws, right? Aren't we? Like, isn't that like if we look at decisions from the courts? I mean, yeah, they're trying to interpret to apply the Constitution in a way, right? But in applying the Constitution, there's going to be a lot of interpretation that has to occur, regardless of what happens. And so we're stuck in this world of interpretation, and that seems to me to be kind of the challenge we're in. It's amazing that we've been able to be our courts have been able to sustain. I don't know, like I don't know. It's just striking to me actually to how much it works. I mean, I can think about all the ways in which it doesn't work, but it also strikes me as, um, yeah. So, Jay, you just says SCOTUS is trying to get back to interpreting the law instead of implying new meanings to the black and white. Eric, yeah, maybe it's in the end. There's always interpretation. It seems to me. And there's always politics involved, right? If there wasn't politics involved, then you wouldn't see certain justices constantly lining up on one side or the other and be politicized, right? And kind of following the one sector of the population or of the intellectual discourse as opposed to and rejecting the other side. Like we wouldn't see that. We would see justices so often kind of floating back and forth. They lean conservative or they lean liberal, whatever that means, right? But they would still move back and forth. So it seems to me that it's a very complicated thing. Thank God I don't have to be involved in it. Okay. Yeah. All right. So, all right, Jeff, what do you have? So, all right, it's not really so different than America. It's just a matter of where on a sliding scale you are. Americans may speak out, draw attention to themselves, but still align. Yeah, I'm not sure what that. Oh, this class 7 response is. Okay. Yeah, I would say that. I would say things are really it's all sort of leaning one way or the other, right? Also depends on local culture and generation in the US. Some Americans struggle to relate to the predominant culture. Humility was part of the culture for many Americans. Yeah. Yeah. I would agree with that. I think though that, when you go to a place like Japan or China or Korea in East Asia, and you interact with people, including people in in different layers of society, different sectors of society or strata, right? Professionals, non-professionals, whatever. Man, it's almost like people have eyes, 360-degree vision, and they're just constantly. I consider it's like a bat. How bats use sonar, right? That they are just sending these signals out everywhere, and they can fly really fast, and you don't realize it's happening, but they are using the sonar, and they're just trying to uh, oh man, Dr. J. Bundy. Oh man. Uh, and so, yeah, I need. Oh, yeah, why only $5 from Hunter Biden's laptops? Man, we should get 5,000. Anyway, the sonar. Thanks, Jay. Nice to see you, man. Nice to hear from you. Um, the sonar, it's so Koreans are like that. They're operating with this sense of it's just this awareness of everything that's happening. It's so subtle, and that they really, in so many ways, don't even know that they're doing it. And again, Japanese, Chinese, etc., East Asians, it's this way. So humility is also so one piece of that. So the awareness of like what's happening around you, right? Very, very key, and different than here in the West, man. It's just different than here in the West. There, especially Americans, there's this sense of like we are kind of I'm just operating as Sam. I am constantly operating as Sam Richards. I walk through the world like this. But what you see is like you don't operate as yourself. You're operating as yourself and all these other people, seen and unseen. And they're just fused like this. And you have to be there. You have to drink in the water, the soju, as it would be. You have to feel it, you have to see it, you have to see it with your third eye, you have to just sense it. And when you do, it's phenomenal, right? So that's the one piece. And then the humility piece about people who are just willing to be quiet and not say things and not push themselves forward, not stand up, not be that nail that gets knocked down. And in all sorts of places where they would ordinarily, you wouldn't even think that you're even standing up. You're just like raising your hand, even like asking a question in class can be interpreted as, trying to get the professor or the other students to think differently about you, or to think that somehow you're special or something, whatever it is. I mean, it's not, I can't even put it into words, the degree to which people will just kind of like just be reserved, man. Oh my God. It's so fascinating. And now I've spent so much time there that I have to really change. And it's really had an impact on me and the way I think about things. So, hey, Benjamin, thanks, man. I wish, yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, man. $10. All, the money really just helps us keep things going. Yeah, I appreciate being able to share it. Anyway, so that's my thing so I'm responding to the thing about, yeah, we see this in the United States. We see a kind of humility, or we see people who are aware of the others. That's for sure. There's no question about that. But man, you just got to be there. All I would say is just, yeah, if you ever get a chance and you feel like, hey, I need to go somewhere, go to Japan, or go to Korea, or go to China. Just feel that it's pretty intense. Okay, so K Company, man, let me respond to that. Yeah, okay, hang on. First off, I want to respond to Eric Sell's comment, and I'm going to put that up first. Do Eric's one. I would say, okay, I have learned. Listen, the truth is, not the truth, but part of the humility that I express comes from a deep sense of that I'm not, is my awareness of my limitations. But you know what? I guess that's what Koreans are. That's what East Asians are doing. Yeah. Okay. All right. So a certain humility. But I've also learned that, people who like sort of lead with their ego and stuff really are not that interesting. So there are things that I suppose I could say about my life. Sometimes, when I'm talking to my wife or whatever, I'm like, "Whoa, man, do you realize that we've had this experience or that experience or this, that, or whatever the case?" And it's mind blowing, right? But you can't say that. You just can't say it in the world. You just keep it to yourself, right? And that's kind of can be a difficult thing. I was walking. I had a former student over a couple of weeks ago. We had dinner. Lori was out of town. She was in New York. So I said, "Hey, we were going to have dinner." I said, "Hey, I said, come on over to the house. We'll just have dinner here." And before he left, I walked him around the house. I said, "Hey, I'm going to give you a tour and I want to show you the house here. I want to show you just some art pieces. And I just want to tell you a few stories about where they came from." So paintings from, India and Qatar and Egypt and Ethiopia and Russia and Haiti and like Korea and Japan and like just all over, right? But I told him a little bit of story about each one, right? And then what I said to him was, I feel like I have to tell you this because we don't get that many visitors to the house, right? People don't see the paintings, they don't know the stories, and when I die, Lori will be the only one that has any of these stories, and then she'll die and nobody will have the stories. And I feel like I just need to tell somebody what some of this stuff is. Just I don't know, I just feel I need to do that. And it felt weird to do that because except that I didn't feel like it was leading like with an ego. But I felt like I was just leading with, I'm going to die and I'm going to take all this with me, all these memories. And I'm not going to take anything with me because nothing will go with me. Nothing at all. I will go, not even my teeth and my bones. They will stay here. Nothing. But still the memories and the stories behind these things. And in a way, it just felt like, oh, God, I just got to tell somebody. But it felt weird to tell him anyway because it felt like bragging or not bragging, but something just felt off about it. But anyway, okay, so all right, go back to the other Jeff that you put up there. I want to respond to. I forget who it was. K Company. Yeah. What do I think about the state of the conversation and narrative around Israel-Palestine currently? Anything that surprises you? Anything better or for worse? Okay, so look, I didn't realize that was your question. Okay, damn. All right, here. Yeah, I'm going to actually do a class on this. I'm going to do a version of. I did it last semester, but our stream went down when I did it, so we don't have it anywhere, which is kind of interesting. But I'm going to speak to a couple of Jewish students about giving them a Palestinian perspective, or not. There are many Palestinian perspectives. There are many Jewish perspectives and Israeli perspectives, and even Israeli and Jewish, because those are two completely separate things anyway. But I want to kind of see this from a pro again, even to say that, but a Palestinian a perspective that centers Palestinian issues and cause, and then a perspective that centers Israeli or Jewish Israeli perspectives or cause, right? And I'm building. What I'm doing right now is I'm putting together those narratives in the most powerful, thoughtful ways that I can, in the way that I kind of do it, without getting into details of particular years and particular treaties and particular whatever. Just to give it a sort of social 19. Here's what you should think about. So I'm doing that. My concern in doing that is that people will take the one video and they'll just send it out there, and then it'll sound like I'm completely pro-Palestinian or completely pro-Israel or whatever. And I don't want to. And so I run the risk of that, but nonetheless, I want to do that. So, okay. So your question again, Jeff, put it back up if you could, please. I think the fact that the war, right? The invasion, I don't know what to call it actually. This incursion into the destruction. I mean, so many things that has gone on for so long is surprising. I think that the initial sort of response that we saw in the first month or so, which I felt much of it, which was very much pro-Palestinian, right? Anti-Israeli, anti-Jewish, and much of it anti-Semitic, to be perfectly honest, right? But much of it, some of it. Let me just say some of it, right? And I in my class, I'll talk about why it is that I would say that. Okay, when I do this class, much of that has toned down tremendously, which is what I expected, right? Because people can't hang on to this; they can't follow something for so long, and so that would surprise me a little bit. I suppose surprised me, or it's sort of. I mean, hang on. On one hand, it didn't surprise me, but on the other hand, kind of how quickly it has died down, I think surprised me. I anticipated that it would, but how quickly. I think that sometimes so I've had quite a number of conversations with, Palestinians, with Israelis, Jews. I mean, just different things, right? Trying to just see this from multiple perspectives. And I don't know, there's so much I want to say, and I don't want to say anything actually. So hang on. So you have to wait till I do the class, and I'll put some things out. I guess I should just say that. It's dreadful, man. Okay. Yeah. Sorry about that. That was a lot to do with, if you answer my question about, but why would it be bad for Europeans to have ethnic homogenous countries the same way Asian countries do? Well, it's not a problem at all. In fact, what we're seeing with ethnic Europeans, and same with ethnic Americans. I mean, once a culture starts to get settled around certain identities, once people start to form their identities around certain aspects of a culture, and then other people come in and start changing that's like kind of unsettling. It doesn't matter whether it's Korea or Japan or Germany or the United States or Brazil. It's like that's the nature of human beings. We get settled around a way of being in the world, and it's not a problem when we feel like we don't want to give that up. Like, come on, that's what our socialization is. It's like me asking anybody, hey, listen, all the men on this stream right now, hey, listen, you really should start wearing kilts, right? The Scottish kilt or whatever. Just wear that. You really need to start wearing it. And most, you would say, no, man. Like if you grew up wearing that would be one thing, but you're not going to be comfortable with that. And so you're going to be comfortable leaving the house wearing a kilt. And if you don't know what a kilt is, a kilt is like a skirt of sorts, right? So what's the problem with being uncomfortable doing that? Well, and that's the same with so many different aspects of our culture, right? So Europe, it's the same thing. Like, so you got this wave of immigration coming into Europe, and as long as the immigrants, assimilate to a degree, then the process of transforming can be very slow. Like the United States in the past, just in my lifetime, has changed so much because of the integration or the assimilation of different cultural beliefs and practices over time. And it's fine. It happens slowly, and people don't resist it, and they go with it for the most part. But when it happens quickly, people are unsettled by it, and it really is. And then it's very troubling and problematic, man, for human beings. So it's troubling and problematic for Europe, for Europeans. Now, mind you, in many European countries, especially in Scandinavian countries where like Christianity has declined, in the Netherlands and so many places where the number of people who go to church, I mean, has declined so much. Well, now you have, Muslims coming in and building mosques and actually, feeling really inclined to worship Allah and to express their Islamic sort of sensibilities or their Islamic beliefs. Well, even though, Europeans were kind of like, yeah, well, we kind of gave up on it's Scandinavian in particular. We kind of gave up on Christianity a while ago. It doesn't, it's, to many, not all, I mean, obviously, but very high numbers of people, right, have kind of like let it go, and have become very secular. And that is fine until Muslims come in and start expressing Islam. And then it's like, wait, hang on a minute. We were secular here. And now we get these people coming in and being Muslim, right? Now, that's even fine, right? Until if the Muslims start demanding certain things based on their Islamic belief system, demanding certain things of the governments, right, and other people, like you have to do this, and like you have to you give us these holidays off and so on, and the public school systems, and everybody, not just our students, but every student in Finland or in Sweden should have these days off, and this should be a holiday that's a national. Muslims aren't asking for that, but eventually it will, right? Eventually you move into that place, and then people start to say, like, "Nah, man, that's not what this is," right? You adapt to us, and what's wrong with telling new people, like, look, we're going to go a little bit, but you're also going to have to really adapt to this new culture in which you're living. And what I find, and I know quite a number of immigrants in Europe, is the vast majority are quite happy to adapt to their new countries, their new cultures, because it's like what they want. It's like it's great. Like I want to really experience the Netherlands in this. It's in the way that Dutch live in the Netherlands. I want to have that experience. I don't want to bring my life in Syria here, or Iraq or Afghanistan here. I mean, that's what I have back home, but here I want to appreciate this. So, but nonetheless, right? So the answer to your question fundamentally is there is no problem, man. Yeah, like whatever. Well, people, people, from a sociological perspective, life is going to be the most civil, the most integrated. People are going to feel the best about themselves and about their neighbors and their communities when assimilation happens very slowly, right? Where the immigration happens slowly, and where newcomers come in, and the assimilation happens slowly and thoroughly, not just like really fast and superficially, but it happens slowly and thoroughly, if you could put it that way. And then people really become members of a society, right? Now, mind you, oftentimes adults don't assimilate very well because they have to learn the language to assimilate very well, and that's really hard. As I have tried to learn Korean, and just like, oh man, God, it's brutal. Like if I went to Korea, I mean, I would give it if I lived in Korea, I would give it my best, but my best wouldn't be very good. Because I'm an adult, I have a whole life. I have things that I'm very busy doing, and now I got to make my mouth speak these sounds and words that are just incredibly difficult for me to speak. So it's not about Korean. It's not about people not wanting to. Most often, it's just like you just can't. Like anybody on the stream. Imagine you go to you go to an Arabic speaking country, right? Or you go to China and you got to learn the language. You got to learn Arabic or Chinese or, or Japanese or Korean or something that's very different alphabet, different characters, different everything. It's just like, imagine how incredibly difficult that would be. Yeah. Yeah. What, yeah. So, Eric, I found social netting while digging deeper into the video clip Tucker shared. Now I look forward to every video or class. Funny you mentioned Bart Ehrman and the CIA in the stream. I've gone deep down those rabbit holes too. Oh, that's awesome, man. Yeah. You mean the video clip from Social 19 that Tucker shared? Yeah. Which was like not even that was not even that was actually a kind of a cool clip that he shared. That was actually a really cool exercise that I did with students. It's the other one that he didn't share, thankfully, but where they made up this video clip. It was Andrew, what's that guy's name, man? He's a really well known. guy, Andrew Sullivan. He's kind of this guy on the right. It was Distort Dinesh D'Souza, who he's a guy that was in prison and Trump pardoned him. And then Andrew Sullivan, he put it out first. And what they did was I was quoting somebody else who was saying that like white people need to be, less white, more open, more this, more that, less this, less that, less racist, less stupid, less whatever. I don't know what it was. And I was quoting somebody else saying that. Well, what Distort D'Souza did, by the way, Dinesh D'Souza is the guy's name, but when he was at Dartmouth, apparently his nickname was Distort D'Souza because he was part of the student paper that they started at Dartmouth. Anyway, he lied. And my mind you, it probably wasn't him. It was probably one of his interns. But they grabbed that clip and they cut out the part that I was saying that these are the words of someone who is doing some diversity training. Here's what they said about all these negative things about white people. And what he did was say, like, this is what I said, that Sam Richards, this professor at Penn State, this is what he says about white people. I'm like, that is just such a brutal, malicious lie to do that. It was so horrible. Oh, and I got so much hate emails and death threats and so on. Yeah, I would never do that to someone, but I have to assume it was one of his, like a young intern or whatever, who was just didn't really understand the vileness of doing something like that. But anyway, that went out, and then that just got picked up by all these conservative or anti-liberal people. I won't say conservative, but just people who needed somebody like me who they could just beat up. That was the worst one, man. The Tucker one was like, yeah, whatever. That was a clip. That was a fair clip, actually. It was a good clip if you listen to what I was saying. Anyway, yeah, so cool, man. Eric, nice to have you on board. All right. Father is a Dutch. Hey, man, my father is a Dutch convert to Islam, and he found a job in Saudi oil company. Hey, Jeff, can you put that up? Yeah, that's actually really cool. In a Saudi oil company, a lot of people in the Netherlands are actually converting from Catholicism to Islam, which is interesting. I know. Listen, you have to define a lot of people, okay, because that's important. But there are probably at least as many, if not more, Dutch former Christians, right, who are converting to Islam, as there are Muslims who are entering into the Netherlands who are converting to agnostic positivism, like turning away from Islam, right? I would say that probably is true. And yeah, it's fascinating, right? In Islam, if you like religions, if you like Christianity, like if you're a Christian and you feel really good about Christianity, if you disregard everything that you hear about Islam and you just wipe the slate clean and you just start reading Muslim like mystics and philosophers and thinkers, and you start really going down the rabbit hole of Islam, it's very, very similar to Christianity. I know, like, oh my God, don't hate me on that. Well, you can, whatever, but I'm speaking as a sociologist, right? The two are very, very similar. You approach the life force, whatever that is for you, right? You approach it in a very kind of similar way. What you get with Islam that's kind of cool is this. I mean, you get a lot of really cool things in Christianity, especially Catholicism. Because I'm a sociologist, I'm all about ritual, right? So I like the ritual. I like Mass. I like confession. I like going to the Mass. I like taking communion. I think it's really cool. I think the idea of the symbolism as the blood and body of Christ is really awesome. And you can do that every day. And I like the idea of the way the masses happen. I mean, I like being in like a really Pentecostal church with a band and, with a great drummer and a bass player and singing and dancing and tambourines. I like all that too. But what you get with Islam is you pray 5 times a day, wherever you are, right? And there's some really cool pieces of, and there are really cool pieces of of Islam. I mean, that's just a prayer. You get a lot of other things, but it's pretty. It's really it's quite fascinating, really. But you have to wipe the slate clean. Well, the only way to wipe the slate clean is to see them in a similar way, is to say something like, look at like all the wars of the 20th century, and think about how, for example, Christians have, according to one person who added up all the numbers, Christians were responsible for the deaths of about approximately 100 million people in the 20th century, okay, through war and violence. Christians. So it makes it a lot easier to look at Islam in so many of the wars and the violence happening in Islamic countries, and be able to not justify it, but if you can hold the two against one another, it makes it a lot easier to clean the slate and do a really thoughtful examination of Islam, right? Yeah, that's all. And I'm not pushing it, because it doesn't matter to me. I'm just being the sociologist that I am. So, okay. What do I think of plagiarism scandals at the colleges? Listen, man, I think that there's a lot of plagiarism that goes on, but in truth, I was looking at the headline today about the DEI person, the VP at Harvard, who's the diversity, equity, and inclusion person. And it's like the 40 instances thus far of plagiarism by her. And it's like, oh God, hang on. There's probably a story here. Like, what are we really looking at? Because the president of Harvard, they like laid out what the plagiarism actually is. And it's, so much of it is just not going far enough and paraphrasing, right? Like, you paraphrase other people, and maybe you don't go far enough, and like how you do that. I mean, some were kind of blatant, right? But also, as someone who's written a lot and footnoted a lot, it's really not that. It can be easy to do. You have to be really careful about it. I'm not justifying, and I'm just saying, like, a lot of these things aren't. You have to understand what exactly is plagiarism, right? And so, what they found in her case, in the case of the president, is that there were, I don't know if there were any instances of what would be like really just malicious plagiarism, like taking something that somebody else wrote and said and claiming it as your own idea. Like, that's pretty malicious. And they were just more omissions and things, which is carelessness, right? Plagiarism based on carelessness. And I've had a couple of those myself that didn't get published, but I caught them, and I'm like, man, okay, that's not good. Just carelessness. I have footnotes everywhere, and I'm working on on something, and I've got like Post-it notes, maybe 40 or 50 all over the walls and my computer and the desk and everything. And I'm putting stuff down, and you just make mistakes. So, I'm not justifying it, but I think it's like, okay, scholars, like, let's make sure that not everybody has that. Not everybody has done that. If you check all the scholars out, if you did a deep dive into scholars across the United States, for most of them, you're not going to find any plagiarism at all, right? And others, you're going to find that there's some egregious examples of stealing other ideas. And then others, which would be the majority of the plagiarism, find it's just going to be carelessness. But nonetheless, that you can't, if students are careless, they come to me, they plagiarize, and they come to me, and they're like, hey, I don't know, I just wasn't paying attention, and I got careless. Well, okay, you got careless, so therefore I won't send you to the Office of Student Conduct, right? It's like, no, you would go there regardless. Even if you're careless, it's still plagiarism. So that's part of the problem here with academics, especially when you're in leadership positions. Like, you can't, if you're going to hold your students to a certain level of accountability, then you have to be held to that as well. So thank God, man. I don't know. Thank God I don't have to think about that. How would I explain Oh, man. So, wait. Eric, how would I explain patriarchy? Oh, I think the sense that um, patriarchy is sort of a thought system or a way of seeing the world where the natural order of things is to have a man or maleness, right, at the top, the ultimate decision maker or adjudicator or something, or the person who would ultimately hold the most power, meaning like the final decision maker would be a man, and then it manifests itself in the world in an infinite number of ways. But patriarchy would be a system in which, in all these tiny little ways, that it's natural. It doesn't always happen because sometimes women would be at the top and making decisions and so on. But the natural way of seeing it's a naturalistic thing to see a man in certain positions like that. And that if you saw a woman in certain positions in a patriarchal system, it always leads you to do one of these. Like, whoa, what? Um, that's why, in the United States, we're not a patriarchal system. We're a system that has been built on patriarchal ideas, which we have the founding fathers in this country. It's not founding Americans or founding humans or founding men and women. It's founding fathers. And then it took many, many years to start to break into that. And now, we could easily have a woman be a president because it's probably either going to be Trump or Biden, and both of they're both quite old, and Trump is probably going to pick a woman to be his vice president if I had to guess, and so that would mean that you got it's very likely that we'll have a woman. So yeah. Anyway, that's what I would say, Eric. Is that yeah? Okay. Um, okay. What else? Hang on. Go back to Sam. Did you go through a Marxist socialist phase early in life? How about that one? Learning phase. It wasn't that I went to. Yeah, I went to a learning phase because when I was studying social theory in the world of sociology, if you take classical social theory, it's like Marx, Weber, Durkheim. Like those are like your. There it is, and there are a lot of other social theorists, obviously, right? But those are like the three, right? You're always going to hit those. Well, when you start studying Marx, it's like, man, you just see the brilliance of Marx. Man, as a sociologist, as a social theorist, it's like, of course, we still study him not because the sociologists are on the left, but because Marx understood the development of industrial society in a way that few other people could or did. And he had something very powerful to contribute to it that other people built upon. And so, and just the idea that I think I said this before a few weeks ago, if you line the writings up of Marx and Engels, I mean, it's just enough to fill a small size library, right? So you have to be impressed. So for me as a social theorist, I obviously read Marx, Weber, Durkheim, but I really dug into Marx. I really, really got into Marx because I was also studying the emergence of communism, capitalism, and socialism in Latin America. And Marx was really well regarded by the left in Latin America. And so I really wanted to understand what that was. And so I spent a lot of time studying Marxism. Yeah, it was really, really cool. And but again, it's like so many things, right? You have to clear your brain and go at it in this way to see like, whoa, what was he saying? And people say, yeah, but Marx was wrong. It's like, no, he wasn't wrong. Nobody's wrong. You could say our founding fathers were wrong, right? They were wrong because they didn't predict that instead of the guns that they had, if they put this statement at the Second Amendment into the Constitution, later people are going to be walking around with these automatic rifles and bazookas and grenades and God knows what. And we got to kind of accept that that's the nature of it. They didn't predict that that was going to happen. And I'm probably quite reasonably certain, whether it's a good thing or bad thing, I'm not making any argument about the Second Amendment, but they didn't predict that. And so Had they predicted it, had someone said, hey, by the way, in like 200 years, here's what's going to happen, I am certain they would have said, okay, hang on a second, we're going to have to revise this Second Amendment. Like, come on, man. So, so you can't say they got it wrong because they didn't anticipate that these things were happening. Well, Marx didn't get it wrong because he didn't anticipate that people would use his theories in a way and politicize and create communism in the way that they did, the Soviet Union and the Chinese and other people, and then ultimately have it kind of fall apart because it wouldn't work in the way that they thought it would. So you can't say you got it wrong. Yeah. Any more that you could say that, Jews who started the kibbutzim movement got it wrong, but not understanding human nature, because most kibbutzes fell apart because of the free rider problem, and fall apart and struggle with that, because you got to deal with people wanting something for themselves. They want more for themselves than they want to give to others, because we're always afraid that other people aren't contributing their fair share. And so therefore, we're always having the sense that other people are free riders, they're riding free on the labor of other people. And so therefore, we always hold back a little bit, right? Not we always, so I shouldn't say that. So many people so often hold back, they reserve a little bit because they be out of a feeling that other people are getting something that more from them than they're getting from other people. So the kibbutzes were all based on that. This is like the purest form of communism that you could imagine. I mean, it's amazing. I spent some time on a kibbutz in Israel years ago, and it's like, it's awesome. And yet you struggle with that. So you can't say they're wrong. So anyway, there it is, man. Okay, so what do we have here? Jeff, do you have another one that you think I should Yeah. Anyway, hey, so Electra, you thought Marx was brilliant back when you were in high school, but felt condemned by everyone else. Yeah, you felt condemned by people who didn't, who did not, who just like they just drink the Kool-Aid, right? Like, oh, communism is bad or whatever. I don't know. Like, but when you really read, you really dig into things, you see, like, man, you really see it. It's so cool, man. Reading Marx, first off, reading Marx is really hard. Reading any old writers is hard because they didn't have uh, the ability to quickly edit documents endlessly like we have now, right? So word processing machines. And so very often, you write one version out and then somebody else writes another version. Then you make some notes and somebody writes another version, and that's it. So imagine if those of us who write, if you had to write one version of whatever long thing that you're doing, and then you just do one quick edit and that's it. It goes out in the world and people have to make sense of what it is you're talking about. And well, that's what reading all these these writings, books and so on, and philosophy and whatever are. Like, you're reading unedited work. No wonder it's impossible to read. So like I got to the point where I just gave up trying to read things in the original, because every time I try, I would fall asleep. And what I would do is, but there were people out there like me who were more mentally ill than me, and they were willing to, read Adam Smith and in the original, right? And just go through and figure out exactly what it is he was saying, and then do a little bit of interpretation, because you got to do some interpretation, and then write summaries of it or analyses out that people like me could read and then make sense of and be like, okay, now I can get Adam Smith. But way more efficient than trying to read in the original, where I just read 3 pages and then fall asleep. And the next night I read 3 more and fall asleep, because it's just unedited gibberish. Not gibberish, but it's unedited work. And I think about, like me, when I'm writing some essay or something, and I've edited it like 20 times, and it's still like, whoa, just to get it clear so that I know that somebody else can read it. So that's something to think about when you're reading all these old writings. They weren't smarter than anybody else. They were just writing with a quill, many of them. And there's only one series of edits that happened as a result of that. Sometimes 2, but yeah. So anyway, that's something to think about. Who's older? Like all governments have fallen or reformed since World War. Yeah, so many, so many. Well, this is what makes the United States. I went back. I made that comment about the Second Amendment of the Constitution, and I know I'm probably speaking to a lot of Second Amendment people here, but um, it, yeah, it's the U.S. It's amazing what that this document was whatever. It wasn't just the way the document's written, the brilliance of the document. It's not just that, because it's the brilliance of the uniqueness of the United States, right? So of a nation that is young. First off, I'm not just set aside. Hang on, I got to take it. Not disregarding slavery, not to disregard slavery and the treatment of indigenous peoples who are already here, but it's a young country with new people coming in and acclimating and assimilating to this new place and taking on the ideas of what became the laws of the land that were being built on top of this constitution. Had you written had England, have you taken that same constitution and put it in France at the exact same time and tried to get the French people to adopt to the Constitution, it would have failed miserably. But it was the United States. It's like you have to see the development and the history in the emergence of this country and the population of the country and the spread westward, and it happened over decades and centuries that allowed that Constitution to live and breathe and really take hold and last that long and get really strong. And so it could never again happen in human history. You will never see anything like that because you couldn't have imposed that Constitution on an old country. Yeah, so that's what makes it's pretty cool. That's my own thought. By the way, I never thought about that before, but that's my thinking. All right, man. Jeff, is there anything else that yeah, anything else? I love the comments in the chat, man. I really love the fact that so many. Yeah, it's just the thoughtfulness that you all bring, and I love the idea that all I'm doing is just jump starting conversations that you all now have, right? And you're thinking about it. And Eric, for example, Eric Eric and I have gone back and forth in a number of emails. And Eric, I have to tell you, I can't keep up, man. And your last email, there were so many cool ideas. I could have just spent an entire weekend responding to you, and then you would respond back. Yeah, so smart and thoughtful. So just know that I just can't. I just have too many things. So sometimes I jump in with somebody, and we really go at it and share really cool ideas, and then I have to ultimately unplug. Yeah, Eric, you should join the stream at some point. Maybe next time. Maybe next Wednesday. Just hop in. That would be really cool. So Dawn, yeah, you're welcome, man. And then finding that social media saving your mind from turning to mush. Yeah, it saves mind from that too. The one thing that I don't know if you all kind of get this, but I was saying this to someone the other day. I'm so used to okay, well, here's a confession, right? When I first started graduate school, I was around these other graduate students that I just thought were really brilliant, and they were, right? Really, really smart. And I didn't feel like I could keep up. I mean, I was always doing one of these, like, just watching people talk back and forth, and I'm just going like, wow, what are they saying? But the only way I learned to really kind of catch up with people, I never felt like I never really caught up, but I could catch up and enough that I could actually feel like I'm a member of the club, so to speak, right? So this is, my kind of master's level, and then definitely at the PhD level, where I met a lot of really smart people. Not to mention professors, right? The only way I could do that would be to simplify arguments and simplify ideas and make them whatever it is that people were talking about. I would reduce it down to the most simplistic of debate forums or whatever it was, like one side or another side. Here are these two things, immigration, right? Undocumented immigration. All right, man, hang on. This is really complicated here. The laws and the history and this place and that place, and it's happening all over the world. Just let me get the most simple idea here and here. Like, okay, now let me hold those up against one another and let me see what that means. Well, I started as I got pretty good at that, simplifying, and then I started teaching with that method, and because that's the only way I could go into classroom and present a complex idea was any idea was to present the simple idea that I came to, right? And I still do that. So like I just have learned that over the past 40 or so years, right? So that when people um, anytime I'm asked a question that's like way outside of my league, I just try to boil it down like, okay, what's the simple thing here? What's the obvious thing? Like I'm trying to say it to my students, but what I'm really doing is saying it to me, right? And yeah. Hey, and K Company. Yeah, thanks for that about how natural and genuine I am in my class and live streams. Yeah, I am, I suppose. I I try to be really open and yeah, try to make it organic. It's not like it's not a show. It's not like a put on. It's just like this is actually really what's happening. And by the way, it's not about yeah, I don't know. That's all. I try to be. So I'm glad you appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate it actually. So yeah, it's the only way I can be in the world, man. It gets me in trouble sometimes, I suppose. Uh, okay. Um, anyway, yeah. So Eric, why don't you should come on next Wednesday. It'd be really nice to have you on, and we'll just talk about a couple of things. Listen, Eric, you got this, man. Reach out to Jeff. You'll do a test call with Jeff, uh, and he'll walk you into Zoom. And it's very simple. All you need is a camera and a microphone, and you're good to go. And he will, yeah, do the test call, and then you'll be ready for Wednesday. Yeah, okay. The Jeff's a genius, actually. He's the hidden hand behind everything. Uh, uh, yeah, Casey. I don't hold back. I don't have hesitance to say things that I maybe disagree with because I'm never sure what I disagree with, right? Like I really don't. What I find are the things that I think I disagree with. Somebody shows me a reason to agree with them or to agree with some aspect of it. You know what I mean? So, and yeah, I don't have that. Look, I'll look. First off, let me just say this right to you. Like, I'm not going to vote for Trump, man. Okay, like that should be pretty clear. I'm just not. Yeah, you're not going to vote for Trump because I think he's a blowhard, and I just can't have a blowhard. I just not. I grew up I was in New Jersey when he was in. No, I'm not going to. Right, but hey, but other people might. He might win, and I'm not going to campaign against him. Like I'm not like, oh God, you anybody but Trump. Like no, like. But I know I'm not going to vote for him. I don't know who I will vote for, but it won't be for him. But he might be. But K company, right? K-Co. This is what I'm saying. But maybe we need Trump, man. Maybe we need 4 years of Trump, and he's going to do some things as a sociologist, right? He might do some things that are really, really important. And and like 20 years from now, people will look back and say, wow, had it not been for that guy doing that thing that he did, the world would have gone off the deep end, right? And that maybe if we had Biden again, or if we had Nikki Haley or whoever it's going to be, I don't know, right? Maybe they wouldn't do that, and maybe Trump's going to be the one. And so I don't know that. And so the thing is, I don't know. And but I know I won't vote for him because he's a blowhard, right? And I'm not going to I can't vote for someone who's so narcissistic in that way, man. I just can't. I can't stomach it. But I don't know. So therefore, I'm like, ah, well. So therefore, I could stand up in a class. I could stand up and talk about him and these other things and what some of those things might be, and really feel connected to it, and I can make the argument very well. So, like, okay, like, all right. Or I can make an argument for or against closing off the immigration gate. I don't know. I don't know. So many things. Um, yeah. Wait. If you want the wars to stop, and this is Kayla's shadow. If you want the wars to stop and make USA good for living and desirable for other people, vote for JT. Who's JT? Uh, wait. Wait, who's JT? Is that Trump? Wait, Trump's arrogance is on her. I don't know, man. Well, maybe it was DT. I don't know. Yeah, well, listen, man. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, see, that's the difference. I don't think I don't think he can stop the wars, right? But maybe, but again, maybe he can. Well, clearly, Biden has been able to stop the wars. So, but I don't know. I don't know, right? So that's the thing. I can't. Yeah. So this Vivek guy, I think he's a fast talker. He just doesn't. He needs more experience on the things that he's talking about. He's talking about too many things. Look, all I know is that when I hit my 50s, just when I hit my 50s, did I start to really understand how incredibly complex the world is. And it was in my early 50s that I started to engage people at much higher levels, right? Higher levels of government, higher levels of international organizations like the UN and so on, more CEOs and people who are leading big, huge corporations and organizations. And actually in my late 40s. And so I've had maybe the past 15 years where I've really engaged at these levels, and I've been able to say, oh my God, the world is so incredibly, incredibly complex, man, especially at the kind of levels of kind of international engagement, right? So when I listen, that Vivek guy, who I like him and his kind of general mostly libertarian orientation, and I think he's a kind of a quick talker, and I like he has some very kind of unique ideas, but I don't get the sense of his understanding of how incredibly complex these things are. And I've said this before, but when I talk to people who are sitting at the tables when things are being negotiated, the kinds of things that are happening at those tables are, wow, man. It leads me to want to just get very, very quiet because I don't know, what's happening behind the scenes in Israel and Gaza and so on right now. There's so much happening. So, um, RFK, yeah, RFK, man. I heard Kennedy speak at Penn State about 15 years ago. He was talking about, it was part of his River Keepers organization. He was talking about the environment and climate change, and I was blown away by how thoughtful and smart he was, and also what a really good speaker he was. But really the things that he was saying about the environment, I was just like, wow, this is really amazing. So. And what he's saying about COVID and so on, man, I've been reading a lot of stuff now that we have time to look back at COVID a little bit. And like, yeah, I don't know, man. I don't, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what I think about a lot of stuff. So, okay. Yeah. Uh, yeah. Okay. What else do we have? Dude's right there. Trump's not a warmonger, and he's one of the only presidents we've had that hasn't started or escalated a war. Yeah, but that doesn't mean too much, right? Like, honestly, because uh, you can escalate a war by not even being part of that war, right? But nonetheless, Trump. he gets he gets criticized in some places where I think people don't give him a certain amount of credit. And then there are other things, like for example, here, let me just tell like someone who's a Trump person, right? These two Navy SEALs who just were killed, right? Um, they died. They were boarding a boat that was smuggling weapons to Gaza from the Iranians, and they boarded the boat. They thought there were weapons. Turns out there were, to seize the weapons. One of them fell in, but he had all his body armor in, and he just went under quickly. Well, the other, so they were Navy SEALs. I mean, these people they're serious and swimmers. The other guy jumped in to save him. Well, they both died, right? Because that's the honorable thing. You jump into to help your comrade. And he probably also didn't quickly take his body armor off, which he needed to do. And so, you know, they both died. And I think about all the statements that Donald Trump has made about soldiers and about all the things, suckers and losers, and the things that people in the military, people have said they directly heard him say, and the things he said about people in the military. And yeah, like that's really disconcerting to me, man. So these two guys, these two Navy SEALs who died, would be, from his perspective, suckers and losers. And it's like, I don't know how I just can't, I can't deal with that. Like, I can't deal with that. I can't overlook that. I just, that feels just, just really horrible. And so if you don't know what I'm talking about, what he is, different things that he has said about members in the military and how he's kind of put himself ahead of them. On one hand, he does the salute thing and whatever, but you got to read what different things that read about that. Just read some stories. It's really very disconcerting, man. That's all I'm going to say. It's not the kind of thing I would say in the classroom. Students don't need to hear that. But I would just be like, man, I'm not feeling that at all. It's just mean. And yeah, so that's all I would say. Yeah, he can't keep his mouth shut. I know. That's the thing, man. So Kalo's shadow. That's the thing. There's so many cool things that Trump can do. Like, he will do things that other people won't do. He will say things that other people won't say. He can, man, he has the ability. Like, dude, because you're not in the middle of it, you could make some things happen. But man, when you say stuff like that, and then we all go off on these tangents talking about the you know the you know the big orange headed guy, all the things, the euphemistic things, negative things people say about him, and then it takes us off target. He could do so many awesome things, and because he's a populist, he could get so many people behind him to do some things that folks like the more mainstream politicians would never do. And he fumbles it. He effing fumbles it by saying those kinds of stupid things. And like, yeah, that's really sad. Okay, Jeff, you had put something up there. The mango mudslinger. Why are positions so old? Why can't a younger our politician do as good or better? Well, first off, listen. But one thing is what I just said. You got to be of a certain age to have the wisdom that you really need to have to govern. Okay. So you got to be of a certain age to have that. And you got to be really smart. And unless you're like Trump and you're smart in the ways of how to be a populist, right? But he's not smart intellectually, this guy. Come on, man. The guy is not. He could not hold a candle intellectually. And I'm just talking intellectually to say like Obama or Clinton, right? Who were, by all accounts of people who worked with them and knew them, that they read all the time. Tony Blair, right? He read all the time. They were just like, man, George Bush the elder, right? Really, really smart in that way. But Trump can't do that. So I'm not talking about their policies. I'm talking about just the intellect that they brought. And that's something you can't, that's something you have to nurture and cultivate. And Biden doesn't have that, by the way, at all. Biden doesn't have that, man. But, but everyone who worked with Bill Clinton said, like, the guy could just pull things from books that he read 10 years earlier, like really dense books. So, he's reading like Henry Kissinger, 10 years earlier, and he pulls something out of that in the middle of a conversation. That just happened all the time with him. That he was a kind of an intellectual savant, and all sorts of other things that he didn't do. But anyway, so that's a thing, right? Yeah, but Clinton was a politician, man. His politics, and starting in Arkansas, man, he was just a politician, and that just got in the way. So his intellect wasn't able to lead the day in a certain way because his being a politician got in the way. But yeah. So anyway, I'm not, again, I'm speaking from a certain perspective. Okay. Hey, Jeff, you had a comment that you put up there a little bit ago that I felt like I just wanted to respond to, and then we probably are going to have to cut at 5 because it's like 2 hours. It's 2 hours we've been doing this. We'll come back next Wednesday with Eric. But did you want to put that up? Did you have something or not? Thoughts on the anti-political correctness movement? This is Nick. How about if I end with this? I think it's some of it's on point. We need the ship got way too far, and in the political correctness movement, the DE&I stuff, it just has gone way too far. And it becomes illogical at a certain place. Just at universities or in businesses, there are far too many VPs and managers and supervisors of just DE&I initiatives, and it's like, it's not about having people in charge of DE&I. It's actually doing something. But there's a point at which all you can do is talk about it, then you can't do anything. It's like, so anyway, it's gone way too far in one direction, and it needed to come back in the other direction. And in the political correctness movement, I mean, it's just like, come on, man. Like, what are we? What's the we spend so much time looking for problems, like everywhere we got to see a problem. Everything can be seen as the glass half full or glass half empty, and we've spent 20 years of training and teaching people to see it as half empty all the time. And so we need to rewrite the ship. But right now, what we're seeing, all these attacks on academia, look, man, my class is not that far outside the mainstream for a sociology class. I mean, there are a lot of sociologists who just come in and who just speak from a very, very much their politicized perspective. There's some, but most sociologists are trying to just stay in the middle and get it right. They may choose the things they choose to look at might be driven by their ideology, which is like, hey, we need to make the world more equal, or we need to make the world a better place, or we need to end hunger or end violence or end something, I don't know, conflict. But most of us are really trying to just get it right. And most of the time. And so my class, Social 19, is not so extremely different. I hold a conservative, what would be a so-called conservative perspective in a race class more than most people would. They would just be afraid to do that because they'd be afraid of being called out as a racist. And I'm not afraid of that because I've spent so many years talking about these issues. So I know what the landmines are. I know what I can and can't say. And well, that's not true. I just know how to engage people to have thoughtful, to think about some cool things. But I think this attack on academia, on universities, is a little bit short-sighted. People are going a little far in their critique. Universities have been taken over, but no, they haven't really. Trust me, they really haven't. Watch my class. Unless I get on them, what are most students doing? They're in their seats on their phones, or they're listening, kind of half listening. They're doing what students do, what any of us did. If any of us had gone to college, those of us who've been to college or in high school, if you just kind of like, you're there, you're engaged, but so many of us are just kind of passively engaged at the very least. So anyway, so that's what I think about some of the anti-political correctness movement. It's coming back so hard. The blowback is so hard and so fast that it's actually going to have to slow down and then come back to the center a little bit, so I would say that. Yeah. So anyway, that's what I say to that. I think it's pretty cool. Fun time today. Thanks for your time. So, thanks, man. Hey, and tomorrow, by the way, so tomorrow is the antithesis of yesterday's class. So yesterday we looked at homogeneous cultures, homogeneity, and tomorrow we're looking at heterogeneous cultures, or cultures in which people are just so vastly different from one another, and what that looks like and how it is. So I have a student from Singapore who's going to be in front of the class. I have a student from Oman, two very, very classes with, such a huge number of foreign residents, and that I don't even know what Singaporean culture is, man. Like, what is it? That'll be really interesting to talk to this guy. Is there a culture of Singapore? Like, it's so interesting. So what that's like, and how fascinating that is. Just like, the cultures where everybody's very much alike. Yeah. So hang on. I want to do one thing. Nachamaglug, I hear you. But I went to NYU and did feel very uncomfortable with many professors pushing and even grading based on DEI woke ideology. It was not a logical environment. It was very trying. Hey, listen, I hear you. And maybe they might have been grading. I think, okay, so some professors probably grade on that and evaluate on some of that. They do. There's no question about that. I know that. But oftentimes they just talk about it, and for what students assume that they're grading based on that. But in fact, it's just a message that's woven into their classroom so much that we assume that they must be grading on that. And I'm not saying they weren't, okay? I don't know, but I also know just of so many instances when people, it seems like they must be evaluated on the basis of that, but they're really not. But they are just putting it out in the room constantly, and it's like, oh God, yes, stop. So anyway, but I'm very sensitive to that stuff, right? So I have to be sensitive to my students as well, who are themselves sensitive to the fact that I'm a white man, and they see me as a white man. And so some students, like, that's really good for them, but for some students it's hard for them. They've learned their whole lives that white men bring X, Y, or Z to the world, right? Are the source of so many of the problems of so many people. So I have to be aware that, like, hey, that's how I'm perceived by a lot of people. So I got to work to bring them on board to see, like, hey, there's another way to see this. That's a narrative that you've been given, and it's a narrative that you've swallowed. It's to some degree, and it is to some degree true, right? In different places, it's absolutely true. White men are very much in a system that has at different times had been very patriarchal. And like, look, my wife is dealing with this patriarchy stuff right now somewhere, man. And is like, hey, I might have to bring you, the white man, in to help out with something, right? Because you're a white man. And like, yeah, we get it, right? So yeah, it's still alive. So I'm not denying that. All right, man. Hey, we should go. Hey, thanks everybody. And listen, man. So we'll make it happen. See some of you tomorrow in class, and otherwise, here we are. Thanks, really appreciate it. Oh wait, your dad joke. Find that. Oh, dude. Wait, Peter Pan. I thought Peter Pan was like oh no, that's Tinkerbell's the girl. Yeah, see, Peter, it's a boy's name. That makes sense.
Be well, everybody.
All right. Be well.